Okay, so this module is going to review the contemporary theories of clinical mental health counseling. To begin, we're going to start with the case study. So how would you proceed? You're in your office, and a 34-year-old Asian American transgendered woman comes to your office. They are anxious and nervous. They complete the intake and confidentiality disclosure is reviewed verbally. This is important because when you do intake paperwork, they sign this, but you also need to review it verbally because how many times do we sign and not read? The client prefers the pronoun she, so she states that she arrived in therapy due to anxiety for the last 6 months. The first was a situational, mostly work-related. And now it occurs at work, home, car, grocery store, and even when she's alone. Her partner is ambivalent about their relationship, and she uses marijuana as a coping tool. What would be your best way to proceed? What are the things in this case study that lead you to questions of why? What's the bottom line? What's the root cause? I can give you a few minutes, just kind of think about that, or a few seconds. Now, some of you may be looking at this thinking, I don't have the first clue of how to proceed. And that's okay. You're in your very first class or close to your first class in this program, so that would be a normal response. So let's look at how we would want to proceed. So we want to look at the personal values or personal factors. Values, beliefs, and biases. These are yours. These are your clients. Okay? Where do y'all match? Where do you not match? What may come up as an issue at some point? Those are the things that you want to come up with, just thinking through what is going to be my response to this client. Now, personal factors is good and everything checks off. Perfect. Go to professional factors. What is your education, training, or both education and training? We can have really good education, and I hope you feel like you're getting that. We can go to really good trainings. What's great is when we have both really good education and training. And the question is, of your professional training and education, do you have the necessary skills to be able to help this client? Now, you might on the anxiety side, because anxiety is a pretty common issue in counseling. But if you haven't had any training on LGBTQIA+, that may stop you from being able to work with this client. Or that may lead you to say, I can work with you up to this point, but at this point, I'm going to have to move you over here and refer you. Okay? So those are things you want to think about. You also want to think about theoretical orientation. If you are a Christian counselor from a very strong Christian counseling viewpoint, then you're going to have some conflicts with this client on the get-go because Christianity says love the person, hate the sin. And the way Christianity views transgendered issues or LGBTQIA+ issues is it's a sin. It's a separation of a person from their creator, God. So you have to understand, if that's where you're coming from, then it might be better for this client's sake to refer out. Now, some may say, well, no, I don't want to refer out because that's my opportunity to show Christ's love. Which is very true. It is an opportunity to show Christ's love. But at the same time, you also have to know, when do you stop seeing the client because it's now crossing a line of not having the education or training to work with this topic. So when we're looking at theoretical orientations, you want to be very clear of what your goal is, what your direction is, and why. Okay? Because if you do decide to refer this client out, you need to be able to talk to that client respectfully and honor them as a person and as a fellow human and a child created by God, and help them find the help that they're needing. You don't want to bash them or make them feel worse than because they're already struggling if they're coming to see you for anxiety-based issues. Okay? So, some terms to know. Theory of practice. This is a set of principles or guidelines that describe and explains a particular phenomenon. It's usually looking at what, how, and why. The model of practice is a phenomenon or aspect of a phenomenon in simplistic terms. We're looking at portions or sections of theory. It's absent of the how and why. It's focused on the what. What are we doing? Okay. So let's look at the 5 applied models. You have cognitive behavioral based models. These are your CBT, ACT, REBT, CT, DBT, TFCBT, MBCT, and we have to know cognitive therapy is our thoughts of an event determines behaviors, emotions, and physiology. Okay, so when you are a cognitive behavioral approach, you're looking at, what do I think that is going to shape my behaviors? If I think that robbing a bank is okay, well then guess what? I'm going to find that it's okay for me to go and rob said bank. My thoughts determine my behaviors. When I get arrested by the police for robbing said bank, my emotions are going to probably be one of, okay, so I got busted. Because my thought at the very beginning was, it's okay to rob a bank. And so my emotions and my behaviors are going to match that thought. Okay? Similarly, if my thought is transgendered clients are the highest population of suicidal ideation, and so I need to show Christ's love. If that's my thought, that's going to be emulating in my behaviors and my emotions and my physiology. Okay? So cognitive behavioral is the way you think, therefore how you act. So here's a description. Situational event, there's a car accident. Automatic thoughts, driving in the rain equals wreck. Reaction, I will no longer drive in the rain. Now, is it rational? No. But that's where we have to break those irrational thoughts. Because just because it was raining and you got into a wreck doesn't mean that if it's sunshiny and dry, you won't get into a wreck. So we have to break those irrational thoughts. This is where rational and irrational thoughts come in to play in the cognitive model. So in CBT, we have behavioral problems and emotional distress that are perpetuated. That is the maladaptive thoughts. Okay? So we're looking at those maladaptive thoughts and we're working on changing those thoughts. This is effective for children, teens, and adults. It involves therapeutic relationship, that is key, goal setting, planning, and structured sessions. Identify and challenge those irrational or dysfunctional thoughts, and elicit behavioral change in and out of the session. So, for example, I've been working with a client who's struggling with the idea of death and dying. And so this week's homework is to focus on living in the here and now. And so we've been working together for about 3 or 4 weeks. And at this point, the client is ready to practice that skill. And so now we're working on living in the here and now. Between now and next week, we'll find out how that works. TFCBT is a leading approach for children and adolescents exposed to trauma. Now, that trauma can be single event or recurring event. This is also looking at modifying distorted or irrational thoughts and unhealthy behavioral and emotional reactions. It also includes being trauma sensitive. So it's about 12 to 16 sessions, and you're focused on psychoeducational, parent training, relaxation and guidance, affect expression and coping, cognitive processing and coping, trauma narrative construction, in vivo exposure, conjoined sessions, and enhanced safety in the future. So those are the things that you're going to focus on in those sessions. Ultimately, the client has to feel like they're in a safe environment in order for TFCBT to work effectively. Cognitive processing therapy, CPT. It's designed for clients who are recovering from PTSD. Again, approximately 12 sessions. It addresses safety, trust, power, control, self-esteem, and intimacy. It helps modify unhelpful beliefs and reprocess trauma memories. It's beneficial for the active duty, military, veterans, refugees, and motorcycle accident survivors. The goal is to reconceptualize the trauma. DBT is a modification of CBT. It's dialectical behavioral therapy, and it assists in borderline personality disorder primarily. It's actually one of the leading treatments for borderline personality. What it can also assist with is substance abuse, eating disorders, and self-harm or suicidal ideation. This assumes problem behaviors stem from skill deficits when going through an emotionally charged situation. Most of the time, these are done in group settings. And so it's committing to a full year of treatment and groups at least 2.5 hours a week. EMDR, I will be honest with you, I am partial to EMDR and CBT. Really have seen a lot of positive with those two, with trauma clients and even my other clients. I've even started working with EMDR, helping clients that are having anxiety issues, because a lot of anxiety issues come from trauma-based experiences. So EMDR is very eclectic, so you can use EMDR and CBT or EMDR and narrative writing. You can use theories kind of together with EMDR, and it flows nicely. The goal is to reduce distress associated with PTSD. There's maladaptive thoughts that are not directly challenged. So unlike the others, this one works really well with those clients that have a wall up or are very deep thinkers. And so you have to work past that to get to the feelings that are underlying the deep thoughts. Extended exposure is not required. A client can stop at any moment. I had one client that we were in a session, and the client said, "I can't continue this, I need to stop." And so we debriefed what was going on and what they were feeling. The client recalls distressing events while receiving bilateral stimulation, and that bilateral stimulation can be audio, visual, or tactile. Now, this theory is still in research, but it is one of the leading theories when working with trauma or vets that are people who have complex PTSD. It's been found to be very beneficial. The biopsychosocial model. This is a philosophical approach to understanding health and illness across a lifespan, closely aligns with general systems theory and how humans are separate but interrelated. It does show the influence of environment and function. Now, I like to add in this one the biopsychosocial spiritual, because we're also learning recently that spiritual aspect is just as vital and important to understanding the human systems as a whole. Okay, collaborative integrated care models. Collaborative care is a more holistic. You're looking at treatment of mental illness and substance abuse as a disease in a behavioral health care setting. So what we're struggling with are diseases, not the way our brain takes in information. It's a primary care approach. It's a population-based prevention approach. And they have a recovery model. So those are some of the main theories that are up and coming. That is not discounting some of the ones that have been around forever and ever. It's just these are the up and coming ones.